I woke up to the news on Monday that Pope Francis had passed away. Even though he was very ill and it was expected for some time, it kind of hit me in ways that I didn't quite think it would. The reality is, the Pope is gone, and now the chair of Peter is currently vacant. Decisions that are made within the next days and weeks and even hours could impact the life of Catholics, including my own children, for potentially decades to come. As someone that makes content in the realm of politics and Catholicism, I popped over to social media right after to see what people were saying about Pope Francis after he had died. And it really felt strange. There were people making it all about themselves. There were people making snarky jokes, and there were people getting in really nasty pot shots. We've kind of been conditioned to post this way on social media, maximize engagement, do what works, get those numbers up. But I couldn't help but think about the why behind why people were posting what they were posting. And so I really hesitated before I made this video. What do I have to say? And can I be honest? There's an awe and reverence to the idea that Pope Francis is going before God right now, his creator. He has to answer for his papacy, the good and the bad, and everything he's really done in his life. And I will have to do that too one day. All of us will. And I think Archbishop Chaput said it best: an interregnum between papacies is a time for candor. The lack of it, given today's challenges, is too expensive. And so, as an American Catholic, I want to be honest here. And I think the best way for this honesty is to see it through a lens of the marginalized. And I don't mean that in a snarky way. I mean this out of sincere reverence for one of Pope Francis's favorite words. He made it his public mission to put the people suffering most in the world at the forefront of what everyone is thinking about. I sincerely admire that. But I think it would be impossible not to notice how the last pontificate really failed those people in many ways. And here are just some examples. The victims of the sexual abuse crisis in the church. Sexual abuse at the hands of the church has driven many Catholics away from the church and is abuse in the highest order. The greatest failure of Pope Francis's pontificate was his refusal to adequately address this problem. And even worse, he had a track record of covering up these abuses and marginalizing their victims. This goes for Marko Rupnik, who is still a priest in good standing in Slovenia, who is credibly accused of serially abusing nuns, and his art is still prominently displayed around the world, including in the Vatican. This goes for Archbishop Gustavo Zanchetta, who is sentenced to 4.5 years in prison in Argentina for continually abusing 2 former seminarians. Pope Francis denied these claims, created a job for Zanchetta in Rome, got him out of the country, and refused to cooperate with prosecutors. And this goes for recently promoted Cardinal McElroy, who Pope Francis just made the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. He was a close associate of disgraced ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, and he refused to act when alerted of a network of systemic sexual abuse was occurring in seminaries in America, as well as sexual abuse documentation in his own Diocese of San Diego. This is a real challenge for the successor to Pope Francis to face accountability and restoration for the victims of this abuse. The underground church in China. The marginalized Catholics in China did not benefit from Pope Francis's agreement with the atheistic and aggressive Chinese Communist Party. They actually got much worse. The infamous 2018 deal between the Vatican and the CCP was so bad that it allowed the CCP to select their own bishops and dismiss bishops that were faithful to Rome. And if there was any hope that this agreement would bring relief to Catholics being persecuted in China, it was quickly smashed. Catholics have been increasingly sent to re-education camps and disappearing from their homes, not to mention the persecution of other religious minorities such as the Uyghur Muslims, currently being persecuted in their own country. And finally, and most personal to me, American Catholics. Many Americans have been directly marginalized by Pope Francis's approach to the American faithful. The most obvious of these to me would be the crackdown on the traditional Latin Mass. What was initially set out to bring unity to the church, it's actually done quite the opposite. And I'd say the communication style of accusations of backwardness, affinity for lace, smells and bells, and breeding like rabbits really wasn't pastoral or prudential in my opinion. Another obvious prudential miss would be his letter to the USCCB on migration, because it came after years of mass migration that led to the death of American citizens, sexual trafficking at the hands of the cartel, and absolute chaos in our cities. The message may have been noble, but it wasn't pastoral or prudential. But most on my mind now, the last marginalized person on this list is Pope Francis himself. From the beginning of his pontificate, he was fawned over by major news outlets, celebrities, heads of state, also known as princes of this world. And like most humans would, he was swept up in it. And while he was being continually co-opted for political movements around the world or social movements around the world or people with mixed motives, at the end of the day, who is praying for his soul? And a bigger question, why do we pray for someone after they die? And the real reason is we want them to go to heaven. Pope Francis will be judged for the successes and failures of his pontificate, just as you and I will be judged for what we say about Pope Francis and also the successes and failures of our own lives as Catholics. And I find that more often than not, when we talk about Pope Francis, we're talking about the bridegroom of Christ, the Church, who we owe total allegiance and faith to. Using Pope Francis's death as an opportunity to do anything but examining our own lives and the fact that we are going to face God one day and have to be accountable for the things that we say and do, I think would be a waste of an opportunity. It was very clear to me in Pope Francis's final homily during Easter that it was very much on his mind that he was about to meet God, and he ultimately did. And so I really want to reflect upon that as we go through the process of choosing the next leader of our church, and sincerely urge people pray for the repose of soul of Pope Francis.